Steven Bartlett's latest investment is a recipe for disaster, and in this video I am going to break it all down for you. But before we start, my name is Sam. I'm a dog and cat nutritionist and proud owner of a chain of independent pet shops where we specialize in nutrition. And today we are going to break down his £75,000 investment in Omni, a plant-based dog food. Now, the founders of London-based startup Omni, which makes plant-based pet food, bagged £75,000 from two investors on Dragon's Den. Famous investors agreed to pour £75,000 into the startup in exchange for a collective 2.5% stake, valuing the vegan dog food business at £3 million. And it wasn't just Steven Bartlett who put money into the venture. Deborah Meaden also joined along. So in this video, we are going to break down the whole thing in two parts. On the first part of the video, I want to go into the nutrition side of things, and I want to break down why Omni is a terrible investment from a nutritional standpoint for dogs. And in the second part of the video, we are going to talk about the business model and why it's a terrible idea. So if you are more business minded and you are here for the marketing and all the business tidbits, skip here and you will be taken to the business bit of the video. But before that, let's start with the nutrition. Now, let's start with the obvious, shall we? Dogs are more meat eaters than anything else. This means that just because dogs can digest certain things like potato or rice doesn't mean that you should give them the majority of their diet coming from plants. That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you only have to look at biology 101. I mean, you have very sharp canines, you have carnassial teeth to crunch meat and bone, you have the inability for dogs to chew food. When me and you eat rice or bread, we can move our jaws sideways. Our dogs can't do that. They can only move their jaws on an up and down motion, and they can only chomp on food, which is a very clear indication that our dogs are more meat eaters than anything else. We also have to look at the ingredients, and they are absolutely dismal. We have potato protein, we have pea starch, we had soya, we have brown rice, we have dried yeast, sweet potato, oats, peas, pea protein, carrot flakes, rapeseed oil, etc, etc. I want to draw your attention to the fact that they do not put percentages on the label, so there is very little traceability as to what amount precisely is going into each bag. And whenever we feed our dogs and whenever we feed ourselves, we want to know how much of everything we are putting into our bodies, and it's the same with our dogs. So the fact that they don't specify what precise amount of each ingredient is going into the recipe, that makes them reserve their right to change, to tweak different quantities from batch to batch to batch, lacking consistency, which is what we want for our dogs. We want consistency. So if the ingredients do not have a percentage, they can change their percentages as they see fit, and you will not get any notice about this. Now, they do bang on about vet-formulated dog food and science-backed dog food, and I want you to pay attention to this. The veterinarian here clearly does not understand nutrition. Guy Sandelowsky, and I'm really sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. There are literally amazing sources of vegan protein like soya protein or black beans, whilst these sources really aren't as powerful as egg protein, for example, whey protein, or beef or chicken. They would be a lot better than the sources of protein they use. To use potato protein and pea protein is pretty bad form. If you are science-based, you might want to look at the potency efficiency ratios, you might look at biological value, you might look at net protein utilization of the protein, and you might look at absorbability ratios of protein. And if you look at those quadrants, then the proteins they put into the recipe aren't as good as others they could have chosen. They do harp on a lot on the science-backed nutrition, and they enumerate and cite different studies to prove their point. But what they do not tell you is what those studies show. So they have two examples here. One is the plant-based diet for dogs. Yet another study confirms better health outcomes on plant-based food. When you look at the actual study they cite, what they leave out is the fact that they have to self-correct and they have to put their hands up and say, we have made a mistake of omission here. And the statement reads as follows: this research and its publication open access was funded by food awareness organization Pro-Veg International, and they failed to disclose that in the first study. So we have Pro-Veg International backing plant-based studies for dogs. Enough said. They also cite another study from 2024 where they say that dogs fed vegan diets had superior health outcomes to those fed conventional meat for all 7 general illness indicators studied. So I did the digging for you and I found something absolutely unbelievable. So first of all, from this sample of 2,500 dogs, what they say is that first, dogs were not exclusively fed the study diets. So you could literally feed your dog raw meaty bones. You could feed your dog a raw-based diet. You could feed your dog whatever you wanted, and that dog would have been included in the actual study, which is absolutely bonkers and lacks all reliability and all scientific debate. So apart from the fact that all these dogs would have been fed whatever, the second more hilarious thing is that they only and solely relied on opinions from guardians, from pet parents who were asked, how is the dog doing? How is the dog's health going? Is the dog okay? So we have a veterinarian here who's relying on studies from dogs who are fed whatever and they don't really know what those dogs are being fed, and then they are relying on the opinions on pet parents as opposed to actually scientific data. Let me tell you something, there is a huge disparity between cohort studies and randomized control trials, and randomized control trials is the gold standard of scientific research, which is when everything is randomized and I give placebo and I control and I probe and I go into the whole study without an agenda and with an open mind. Whereas a cohort study, a weak cohort study such as this one, relies on observational data and they do not actually know whether the dogs are being fed a plant-based diet or a raw meat diet. They literally have no idea. So with this study, you can actually print it out and wipe your bottom with it, because it's the only thing this is going to be good for. So now that we have debunked the actual dietary needs for dogs, and we have actually debunked a lot of these science claims, a lot of these very, very weak studies, if you can call them studies at all, we can say that veganism is an extreme or very ideological thing to do. I mean, it's cool, amazing, whatever, if you choose to do this for yourself. And I have vegan friends and more power to them. They have to supplement their diet and they go into things wide open. But in our opinion, you shouldn't do it to a dog, because it's a bit like feeding meat to a rabbit or a horse. It's something that goes against their biology. It's something that goes against their species. The last thing I want to touch upon before we go into the business claims is that they claim that these are novel proteins. These are not novel proteins. If you have a dog with an allergy and the dog is reactive to, say, chicken or beef, your dog might not be reactive to kangaroo, to quail, to ostrich, to sardines, trout, horse, whatever the case might be, crocodile, I don't know. But there are many different novel proteins you can try, even goat, where the dog would be a lot better off and they would get a lot more of the better amino acids from that animal-based protein. And by the way, if you really want to know what the best dog food is for your dog, I highly encourage you to download our free guide, How to Feed Your Dog Better. The link will be down below. How to feed your dog better. It's free. Now, let's look a little bit into the business model. So, Omni is mainly a D2C business. This is a direct to consumer, which means that they do not rely on other channels such as retail to sell their product. And those are very, very hard to make money from in the pet food industry as a standalone business. Now, there are huge conglomerate companies that have different brands and they can actually make money because the sum of the parts sort of makes sense in the end. But as a standalone company, is not very easy to make money. And here we need to talk about the CAC and the LTV. Now, they said that it cost them about £40 to acquire a customer, and they said that they made £400 on the back of each customer they converted. And this is obviously without other manufacturing costs, and this is not a net profit. But those are the two key figures they came up with. Now, let me tell you something. Customer churn in pet food is absolutely insane. You will be seeing people, and you might know this if you're a pet parent, that you will go from dog food to dog food to dog food to dog food, and sometimes people won't even give it a second thought. They will just change the dog's food, and you will literally lose customers and gain customers all the time. Customer churn in the pet food industry is absolutely massive because dogs can be fussy. They might turn their nose to the latest food and then you have to find a new one. And us as pet parents, we tend to be very weak and we aren't quite as decisive as we would want with our dogs. I mean, this is very similar to HelloFresh, and I made another video with the business model of Butternut Box and HelloFresh. And with HelloFresh, 90% of people cancel their subscription within 12 months, and that's a lot of churn. Dog food churn is also massive. Subscription dog food churn is even more painful. I mean, Dominic Richer, HelloFresh's CEO and pioneer, said in an interview that for every $1 spent to acquire customers, it takes them 6 months to get the $1 back. Now, HelloFresh here, which is one of the few public trading companies that we have that is similar in business model to Omni, turns over $7.5 billion, has a working capital of minus $400,000 and a $2,400 free cash flow. Yes, you have heard that correctly. $2,400, and these are 2023 numbers, which were better than 2022 numbers. I mean, ultimately, no one really knows whether a company is going to survive or not, or they are going to succeed or not. The good thing that Omni has as a business is that they are hyper focused on a niche, on a very unsaturated niche, and they want to cater to people who are already vegan, already subscribed to veganism, and they want to potentially convert their pets onto veganism. And that's the only one thing I would say this business has going for it. But in terms of quality of the food, in terms of business metrics, in terms of their scientific claims, they are absolutely really patchy, and I wouldn't be surprised if this thing goes nowhere. I mean, Stephen Bartlett peddles some absolute rubbish, and he platforms a lot of guests that are extremely dubious in their claims. They are really clickbaity, they are very sensational, and they sometimes lack scientific rigor. I mean, you only have to look at some of the guests he platforms. It's absolutely ridiculous, and the thumbnails are ridiculous, and the titles are ridiculous, and a lot of the context there is ridiculous. Anyway, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.